Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at how GenAI is revolutionizing software testing.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be involved in this field.
Absolutely. And we're going to uncover, I think, some real aha moments for anyone
Mhm.
listening in as we look at just how this tech is making testing, faster, smarter, and way more efficient.
Yeah, and I think, one of the most fascinating things is how Gen AI is really tackling some of the biggest challenges that we face in software testing,
Yeah.
head on. I mean,
Oh,
we're,
right.
we're talking about moving away from those,
Yeah.
manual time-consuming processes
Mm.
to these AI-powered systems that can adapt and learn like in real time.
Totally. So let's sort of set the stage here a little bit. We know that Gen AI can, create things like text images, even music, but how does it actually, work in the world of software testing?
So think about all those limitations that you run into, when you're doing traditional testing, like create just tons and tons of test cases, or even just trying to get like realistic data that reflects, how people actually use the software.
Hmm.
And that's where Gen AI steps in. It automates a lot of those tedious tasks, and it generates something called synthetic data, which is essentially, artificial data that's designed to mimic real user data, but without any of the privacy risks.
So it's almost like having like this tireless assistant that's not only, cranking out those test cases, but also like creating a whole world of, realistic user data to test with.
Exactly. And it goes even further than that. Gen AI can actually predict potential bugs before they even happen by analyzing historical data. So testers can really focus on the riskiest areas of the software first.
Now that's what I'm talking about, working smarter, not harder, right? But let's get into some specifics here. What are some, concrete examples of how this is actually being used right now in testing?
Yeah, so let's take a look at test case generation. Instead of manually creating each scenario, Gen AI can like rapidly generate a whole bunch of different test cases, covering a wide range of inputs and, those edge cases. The tricky scenarios that you might overlook, if you were doing this manually.
Yeah, those edge cases can really trip you up.
Right. And this ultimately leads to, much more thorough testing, but in way less time.
Huge time saver.
Yeah.
But what about situations where you're dealing with, really sensitive data, like in a healthcare application, for example? Is it even possible to use Gen AI in those cases?
Absolutely. And this is where the data generation capabilities of Gen AI really shine. So let's say you're testing a new healthcare app. Gen AI can create this synthetic data that mirrors real patient records. So you can actually, run really realistic tests without ever using any real patient information.
Now, that is a game changer for any industry that deals with, strict privacy regulations. Sounds like Gen AI is opening up like a whole new world of possibilities. But I'm curious, are there any tools out there right now that are using Gen AI to help testers do their jobs?
Oh yeah, there's some really impressive tools emerging, and one that comes to mind is testim.io. And what's cool about Testim is it uses AI to not only generate the automated tests,
Oh,
but also to maintain them.
oh, interesting.
So as your software changes,
Yeah.
those tests can actually adapt automatically,
Yeah.
which saves developers, a ton of time and effort.
So less time, wrestling with code and more time focusing on, the big picture. That sounds like a win-win. But what about visual testing? Making sure that the user interface looks perfect, across all those different devices and screen sizes. That can be a real pain. Can Gen AI lend a hand with that too?
Definitely. And this is where a tool like Applitools comes in. They use AI for visual testing, and it can actually catch even the tiniest little UI inconsistencies that a human eye might miss, which is really important for web applications, where even a small visual glitch can really impact the user experience.
It's amazing to me just how Gen AI is bringing, this level of precision and efficiency to testing. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to make sure that we're connecting all of this back to you, the listener. You know, why should you even care about Gen AI in testing, even if you're not, a developer or a tester yourself?
Well, I think at the end of the day, Gen AI in testing is really all about creating better software for everyone. I mean, by making testing more efficient, more comprehensive. We're helping to ensure that the software we use every single day is, more reliable, more secure, and ultimately just a better experience.
That makes a ton of sense. So it's not just about making life easier for developers. It's about improving the quality of the software that we all rely on, every day.
Okay.
So let's unpack that a little bit. What are some of the key benefits, that Gen AI brings to the table when it comes to testing?
Sure. So one of the big ones is increased test coverage. Gen AI allows you to test a wider range of scenarios.
Mm.
which means you're going to be able to catch more potential issues before they actually make it into, the final product.
So fewer of those, like, frustrating bugs that we've all encountered at some point.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm all for that. What about the speed of development, though? Does GenAI have any impact on that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. GenAI can drastically reduce testing time,
Yeah.
which means that you can get software updates and new features out to users way faster.
Yeah.
And that kind of speed is essential these days, in this fast-paced tech world.
It's like GenAI is putting the pedal to the metal when it comes to software development. But with all this like speed and efficiency, are we risking overlooking certain bugs? Are we compromising quality in any way?
That's a great question, and it highlights another key benefit of GenAI because it can analyze historical data and predict potential problems. It actually improves defect detection. Catching bugs early,
Yeah.
Leads to higher quality software overall.
So it's more about like proactively preventing those problems rather than, just reacting to them after they've already popped up.
Exactly, yeah.
That's pretty impressive. But we've been talking about all the amazing things that GenAI can do in testing, but are there any downsides, any challenges that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, of course, like no technology is perfect, right? I think one of the biggest considerations is data privacy and security, especially when it comes to training these, Gen AI models. They need massive amounts of data to learn. And so making sure that data is handled responsibly is absolutely crucial.
That's a really good point. So there needs to be like a real emphasis on, ethical data sourcing and like robust security measures in place
Absolutely.
to protect that information.
Yeah, and we can't forget about the human element either. While Gen AI can automate, a lot of these tasks, it's important to remember that human oversight is still really important.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that the outputs that are generated by these AI systems are, accurate and relevant.
So it's not about replacing human testers entirely. It's more about like empowering them with these new tools and insights.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about, creating that partnership between human and machine.
That's really interesting. So what does this, evolving landscape mean for the future of software testing then?
Well, I think we're going to see some pretty incredible things. Imagine a world, where test scripts can like heal themselves. So they can automatically adapt and fix errors, as they come up.
Wow.
Or AI-driven systems that act like test oracles, constantly monitoring applications and, providing feedback in real time.
This is where it starts to feel like we're living in a sci-fi movie. But it also sounds incredibly powerful. What do you think this means for the future of software development as a whole?
Well, I think we're on the verge of a major shift in how software is, developed and tested. Gen AI is already having a huge impact. And as the technology continues to, advance and mature, I think we can expect to see, even more innovative applications and breakthroughs.
It's been a really fascinating look so far at how Gen AI is, changing the world of software testing. We've gone from automating those tedious tasks to predicting potential problems before they even occur. And we even touched on some of the, the challenges and ethical considerations that come along with this new technology. But before we let you go, we want to leave you with something to think about. As Gen AI becomes more and more, integrated into software development, what is the role of the human tester going to become? Are they going to become obsolete? Or will their skills evolve to, complement the power of AI? It's a question worth exploring as we, move into this exciting new frontier of technology.
And I think as we explore this further, it's important to remember that, Gen AI is not just about automating testing. It's about unlocking these new levels of creativity and efficiency in software development. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible and creating a future where, software is more reliable, more intuitive, and more enjoyable for everyone.
Absolutely. Stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll explore those future possibilities in even more detail. Welcome back to our deep dive into Gen AI and software testing. So before we took a little break, we were talking about those incredible, future possibilities of Gen AI. Things like self-healing test scripts and AI-driven test oracles.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think about, right?
Yeah, these advancements really could like fundamentally change how we ensure software quality.
Definitely.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. Are there any like real world examples of these, futuristic concepts in action today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're starting to see glimpses of that future already.
Yeah.
For example, there are some companies out there that are using AI to analyze code, like in real time, to identify potential vulnerabilities and, even suggest fixes. before those vulnerabilities become like actual problems.
So it's like having, like an AI pair programmer that's
Yeah,
constantly looking over your shoulder and helping you, catch those errors before they turn into like these huge issues.
yeah, that's a great way to put it. And this real-time analysis, can significantly cut down on the time and cost of fixing bugs, which ultimately, leads to faster development cycles and higher quality software.
I mean, that sounds like a dream come true for any developer who's ever spent, hours or days chasing down like one tricky bug.
Right.
But let's switch gears for a second and talk about another area where Gen AI is making a big impact, and that's in testing in like these really dynamic environments like e-commerce platforms.
Yeah, e-commerce is a great example of where, that adaptability of Gen AI really shines. These platforms are constantly changing. You're adding new features, running promotions, you're dealing with fluctuating traffic volumes. And traditional testing methods often just really struggle to keep up.
Yeah, I can imagine. With all those moving parts, it's got to be like so difficult to make sure that everything's working perfectly, under all those different conditions.
Exactly. And Gen AI offers some pretty powerful solutions for that. So for instance, you can use Gen AI to dynamically generate test cases that take into account, things like peak shopping times, regional promotions, new product launches, and even, like those unexpected traffic surges.
So it's kind of like having like a testing system that's, it can anticipate those real world scenarios and adapt accordingly to make sure that the platform can handle, pretty much anything that's thrown at it.
Precisely. And this approach to, dynamic testing is essential for e-commerce platforms. Where even a small glitch during a peak shopping period can have a massive impact on revenue.
Makes sense that, e-commerce would be sort of at the forefront of adopting this. But what about other industries? Where else are we seeing Gen AI being used to, boost software quality?
Well, Gen AI is being used in a whole range of different industries now, from healthcare and finance to manufacturing and transportation. Um, for example, in healthcare, Gen AI is being used to test the accuracy and reliability of medical devices and software,
Mm.
which ultimately helps to ensure patient safety.
Yeah, that's a really powerful example of, how Gen AI can have like a real tangible impact on people's lives. It's not just about, making software faster or more efficient. It's about making sure it's safe and reliable, especially for those critical applications.
Absolutely. And in the financial industry,
Yeah.
Gen AI is being used to test the algorithms that are used for things like trading and risk management,
Yeah.
which can help to mitigate, financial risks and ultimately improve, decision making.
So it's really fascinating to see how this technology is being applied in, all these different domains, each with its own unique set of challenges. But as we kind of delve deeper into, this world, it's important to acknowledge that there are, also some ethical considerations
Yeah.
that we need to, carefully consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the biggest ones that comes up is this potential for bias in AI systems. If the data that's used to train these models is biased, it can lead to discriminatory or unfair outcomes. Like take, for example, an AI system that's used for loan approvals. If that system is trained on biased data, it could unfairly deny loans to certain groups of people.
Right. So it's really highlighting the importance of making sure that, the data used to train these Gen AI models is, diverse and representative of the population it's going to be used on.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to be really careful about, identifying and mitigating that potential bias to ensure that these systems are used ethically and fairly.
Absolutely. So let's shift our focus back to the future for a moment. What are some of the most like exciting possibilities that Gen AI holds, for software testing in the years to come?
Well, I think one of the most intriguing ones is the development of fully autonomous testing systems. So, imagine software that can not only test itself, but also like learn from its mistakes and improve its own testing processes over time.
It's like the ultimate goal, right?
Right.
A system that can just continuously test and improve itself without any human intervention. How realistic is that vision, though?
Well, fully autonomous testing is still a ways off, but we're making some pretty significant progress in that direction. I mean, for example, there are companies out there that are already using AI to automatically generate test cases, execute those tests, and even analyze the results without any human involvement.
It really is amazing to think about, how far we've come in such a short amount of time. But as we kind of move towards this, future of more autonomous testing, what happens to the role of the human tester? Do they become obsolete?
That's a question a lot of people are asking, but personally, I believe that human testers will still play a really critical role, even in this world of increasingly sophisticated AI systems. It's just that their skills and expertise will need to evolve to kind of complement, the capabilities of AI.
So rather than, being replaced by robots, human testers will become more like AI trainers or supervisors, kind of guiding and overseeing the work of these intelligent systems.
Exactly. Human testers will bring, their critical thinking skills, their problem-solving abilities,
Hmm.
and, that domain expertise to the table to ensure that these AI systems are being used effectively and ethically.
It sounds like there's like a whole new era of collaboration emerging,
Mhm.
between humans and AI in the world of software testing, each bringing their own unique strengths to, create this more robust and efficient testing process. But let's take a step back for a second and just kind of recap some of the key takeaways from our explorations so far. What are some of the most important things that, our listeners should remember about Gen AI in software testing?
I think first and foremost, Gen AI is already having a significant impact on how software is developed and tested. It's automating those tedious tasks, improving test coverage, and helping us to catch bugs earlier on in the development process.
And it's not just about making, software better, it's about making it safer and more reliable,
Yeah.
especially for, critical applications like healthcare and finance.
Exactly. And we also need to be mindful of those ethical considerations surrounding Gen AI
Mhm.
and ensure that it's being used responsibly and fairly.
It's a powerful tool, but, like any tool, it needs to be used wisely. So as we look ahead, the possibilities are really exciting. We're talking about things like self-healing test scripts, AI-driven test oracles, even fully autonomous testing systems. All of this is within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time to be involved in software testing. And as Gen AI continues to evolve, we can only expect, you know, even more innovative applications and breakthroughs in the years to come.
This has been an incredible journey so far. I mean, we've really explored the power of Gen AI to transform software testing, and we've even gotten a glimpse into a future where software can practically test and improve itself. But our deep dive isn't over yet. Join us for the final part, where we'll explore the future of Gen AI and its impact on the world of software development even further. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Gen AI and software testing. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have, from the
Yeah.
basics of Gen AI to its, real-world impact across different industries.
We even touched on, some of those ethical considerations.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely. But before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. We've talked about how Gen AI is making software, better, faster, more reliable. But what does this all mean for the people who actually build and test that software?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I think as Gen AI becomes more and more integrated into the whole software development process, there's naturally going to be, some concern about what the future holds for human developers and testers.
Right. Are those jobs going to disappear?
Right.
Or are those skills just going to need to evolve?
Right. Is it humans versus machines? I
Exactly.
think it's definitely more nuanced than that, though. The reality is that Gen AI is not about replacing humans entirely. It's about augmenting their capabilities.
Yeah.
Empowering them to work, smarter, more efficiently.
So it's not about, eliminating jobs. It's more about, transforming those jobs.
Exactly.
What would that look like, in practice?
Well, imagine a world where developers can offload, those repetitive coding tasks to Gen AI,
Hmm.
freeing up their time and energy to focus on the more creative and strategic aspects of, software design.
Yeah, no more, like just slogging through those tedious tasks,
Mm.
more time to focus on those big picture ideas.
Yeah, good.
But what about those testers out there? How are their roles going to evolve in this new world?
So testers, I think, are going to become more like strategic advisors.
Yeah.
They're going to be focusing on those higher level testing strategies. And they're going to be, collaborating with these AI systems to ensure, you know, comprehensive coverage and quality. They're
Mm.
really going to need to develop a deep understanding of, how these systems work.
Yeah, how to interpret the results
Exactly.
and how to, actually guide them in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it's not just about, knowing how to write those test scripts anymore. It's about, understanding the inner workings of AI.
Right. And how to use that, to create better software.
Exactly. The role of the tester is going to become more analytical and more strategic. It's going to require, a deep understanding of both the software that's being tested
Hmm.
and, the AI tools that are being used to test it.
It sounds like a challenging opportunity, but also a really exciting one, for those testers out there to, really level up their skills and become, true masters of their craft.
I agree. I think it's going to be a whole new breed of testers emerging.
Yeah.
Those who are comfortable working alongside AI, who can think critically about, the data and the results,
Hmm.
and who really embrace, a continuous learning mindset.
Always learning, always growing. But, for those who are just, starting out in their careers or thinking about, maybe getting into software testing, this might seem like a bit daunting. What advice would you give to someone who wants to be prepared for this, AI-powered future of testing?
I would say, embrace the change. Don't fear it. Gen AI is a powerful tool, but at the end of the day, it is just that. It's a tool. And the human element, I think, is always going to be critical in software development. So,
Yeah.
focus on developing those critical thinking skills,
Mm.
those problem solving abilities and, a solid understanding of how software works.
Those are the foundational pieces that are always going to be valuable, no matter, what the technologies are, down the road. But what about, actually learning about AI? Is that something that, aspiring testers should be, actively pursuing?
Oh, absolutely. The more you understand, about AI, how it works, its limitations, the better equipped you're going to be to work with these systems
Yeah.
effectively. And there's so many resources out there. There are courses, workshops. You can even just, experiment with AI tools like ChatGPT just to get a feel for, how they operate.
That's a good point, and it's a reminder that, continuous learning is so important in any field, but especially in, a field that's changing as rapidly as technology. But before we let our listeners go, I want to leave them with, one final thought. We've talked a lot about, the technical side of Gen AI in software testing, but what about the bigger picture? What does all of this mean for the future of software itself?
That's a great question. I believe that GenAI has the potential to unlock, a whole new era of software development. One where software is not only, more reliable and efficient, but it's also more intuitive, more personalized, and, ultimately more human-centered.
That's a really compelling vision for the future.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a really exciting one. So, to our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay curious because the future of software development is going to be incredible.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure, exploring all of this with you.
Likewise.
I hope this deep dive has given everyone, a better understanding of how, this technology is shaping the world of software testing
Mm.
and has sparked that curiosity to, keep learning and keep exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And thanks to you, the listener, for tuning into The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep diving deep into the world of knowledge.